When my mother said it, she didn't realize she had just opened a door I had spent years barricading shut. "The congressman's wife is hosting the fundraiser tonight," she said casually, pinning her dupatta in place. "It's going to be very high profile." I looked up from my phone. "Who?" I asked, though something inside me already knew. "Ayesha Malik." Mom replied. "Why, do you know her?" The room went silent, even though the ceiling fan kept turning above us. Ayesha Malik. The name hit me like a sudden drop in an elevator. Fast, breathless, disorienting. I hadn't spoken it aloud in years. I hadn't needed to. Some names live quietly in your chest, heavy and unresolved. She wasn't just anyone. She was my law school roommate, my first real friend in a city where everything had once felt unfamiliar and sharp. We had shared a tiny hostel room, late night coffee, panic before exams, and dreams that felt big enough to change the world. We promised each other we would never lose ourselves to power or men or shortcuts. We would become lawyers on our own terms. I believed that promise, until I learned how easily some people rewrite their morals when opportunity knocks. Ayesha had been brilliant, charming in a way that made doors open without effort. Professors adored her. People trusted her. I trusted her. That trust cost me more than I knew at the time. She took my research and presented it as her own. She quietly slid into the internship I had secured after months of chasing recommendations. And when I was already bruised but still standing, she took the one thing I had guarded carefully, my heart. I didn't hear it from her. I saw it, outside the courthouse, laughing with the man who told me he needed space. The man who later married her with breathtaking speed. Ayesha never explained, never apologized. She just moved on, as if I were a chapter she could afford to forget. Now she was the congressman's wife, successful, influential, untouchable. My mother watched my face closely. "Zara, are you okay?" I inhaled slowly. Years had passed. I had passed too through grief, anger, rebuilding. I was no longer the girl who cried silently in a hostel bathroom. "Yes," I said finally, standing up. "I'm fine." And as I looked at my reflection, one thought settled calmly in my chest. If she was hosting, then maybe it was time I showed up. The mansion didn't feel like a home. It felt like a statement. Tall gates, glowing lights, guards at every corner, power disguised as hospitality. As I stepped inside, the air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. Conversations floated around me in polished tones, every laugh measured, every handshake strategic. I adjusted my shawl and reminded myself why I was there. Not to confront, not to unravel, just to observe. Then I saw her. Ayesha Malik stood near the center of the room, radiant in ivory silk, her hand resting lightly on her husband's arm. The congressman leaned toward her as she spoke, listening the way powerful men listen to women they believe elevate them. She looked exactly as I remembered, confident, composed, untouchable. Only now the world agreed with her. Her eyes met mine. For a fraction of a second, the smile on her lips faltered. It was subtle, almost invisible, but I caught it. Law school had taught me how to notice what people tried to hide. Recognition flashed, followed quickly by control. "Zara," she said, stepping toward me as if we were old friends reunited by fate. "Oh my God, it's really you." "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "It's been a long time." She hugged me lightly, carefully, like someone handling a memory rather than a person. "I had no idea you were in town," she said, already performing for the room around us. "You look wonderful." "So do you," I said, meaning none of it and all of it at once. We stood together, smiling for appearances. She asked about my life, my work, my family. I told her the truth, but selectively. I mentioned my legal advocacy firm, my focus on financial ethics, my belief that accountability was the backbone of justice. Her fingers tightened around her clutch, just slightly. "That must be intense." She said softly, "It is." I agreed, but I've learned that the most dangerous lies are the ones told politely. Her laughter came too quickly. "You always were idealistic. And you always were practical," I replied. The music swelled, and guests drifted in and out of our conversation. To them, we were two successful women reconnecting. No one saw the history between us, the betrayal buried beneath silk and chandeliers. As the night went on, I watched her work the room effortlessly. Every donor left feeling chosen. Every smile hid calculation. She had mastered the art of survival in high places. But survival built on secrets never lasts. As I prepared to leave, Ayesha touched my arm. "We should catch up properly sometime," she said. "There's so much to talk about." I met her gaze, calm and unwavering. "Yes," I said, "there really is." And for the first time that evening, I saw something unfamiliar in her eyes. Unease. I didn't move quickly. People assume revenge needs speed, fire, spectacle. I knew better. Real consequences arrive slowly, dressed as routine. They slip into lives unnoticed until there's nowhere left to hide. After the fundraiser, I returned to my work without any dramatic gestures. No messages, no warnings, just files, patterns, and patience. Years earlier, I had learned that Ayesha's strength was her image. If that cracked, everything beneath it would be exposed. The first thread was small. A charity listed under her name that had no physical office. Then a consulting firm that existed only on paper, funneling donations into private accounts. Nothing illegal on its own. Together, it told a story. I handed what I found to people who knew how to listen. Journalists who understood restraint. Auditors who believed in process. I stayed invisible. I didn't need credit. I needed accuracy. The headlines didn't explode. They whispered. Questions raised over political donations. Sources call for review of Congressman's charity network. At first, Ayesha responded the way she always had, with charm. Statements were issued, smiles were maintained, but behind the scenes, sponsors hesitated. Invitations slowed. Silence grew heavier than scandal. Weeks later, I saw her outside the courthouse. The same courthouse where I once stood frozen, watching her laugh with the man who chose her over honesty. This time she was alone. She looked tired, stripped of the polish that once made her untouchable. When she saw me, something in her face broke. "Was it you?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I didn't pretend not to understand. "No," I said calmly, "it was the truth." She swallowed hard. "You don't know what it took to get here. I did what I had to do. So did I." I replied, "The difference is, I didn't erase people to survive." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt no victory in them. Only closure, not the kind you plan, but the kind that arrives when the story finally tells itself. The investigation moved forward without my name attached. That mattered. Justice didn't need my face. It needed facts. Ayesha's fall wasn't loud. There were no flashing cameras, no public apology, just quiet consequences, positions lost, doors closed, a reputation no longer unquestioned. As I walked away from the courthouse, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even relieved. I was free, because I hadn't destroyed her life. I had simply refused to carry her lies any longer, and that, I learned, was enough. Time has a way of settling things that emotions never can. Months passed, and the noise around Ayesha's name faded into something distant, like a storm that had moved out to sea. I didn't follow every development. I didn't need to. My life was finally loud enough on its own. My firm grew steadily, not through favors or shortcuts, but through trust. People came to us because we didn't bend, because we asked difficult questions and stayed when answers got uncomfortable. One evening, as I sat in the back row of a conference hall, I listened as my name was called for an award recognizing integrity in law. The word integrity stayed with me longer than the applause. In the audience, my mother pressed her hand over her mouth, eyes shining. When I stepped off the stage, she hugged me tightly. "You did this yourself," she whispered. Without becoming anyone else. That mattered more than she knew. I thought about Ayesha then not with bitterness, but with distance. I understood now that revenge had never been my goal. If it were, I would have acted from anger, not patience. What I wanted was to reclaim what had been taken from me, the belief that doing the right thing didn't make you weak. One quiet evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. "It's me." It read. I don't expect a reply. I just needed to say I'm sorry. I should have been better to you. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Once, an apology from her would have meant everything. It would have kept me awake, replaying old conversations, reopening wounds I had finally learned to live without. I didn't reply, not because I hadn't forgiven her,